The stars looked different tonight. Dr. Alan Wright rubbed his tired eyes and leaned closer to the monitor. For 3 nights straight, he had noticed something unusual in the data coming from the Lunar Observatory's deep space array. At first, he thought it was a glitch in the system. But now he was sure. Something was heading toward Earth at speeds that should be impossible. Alan took a sip of his cold coffee and called his assistant. "Pete, can you come look at this?" His voice echoed in the empty monitoring room. It was just past midnight, and most of the staff had gone to their quarters in the lunar habitat. Pete Harris shuffled over, his lanky frame casting a long shadow under the harsh fluorescent lights. "What's up, Doc?" he asked, using the nickname Alan hated. "These signals, they're not random. Look at the pattern." Alan pointed to the screen where a series of pulses appeared at regular intervals. "That's artificial, and definitely not one of ours." Pete's smile faded. I'm saying we need to call Houston right now." Within 24 hours, observatories around the world confirmed Alan's discovery. Something was approaching Earth. Not one object, but hundreds. The news spread quickly despite government attempts to prevent panic. Social media exploded with theories and grainy telescope images of lights moving across the night sky. In her apartment in Washington, D.C., Admiral Susan Miller was woken by a phone call at 3 a.m. As head of the United Nations Space Defense Council, she had been expecting this call ever since humans started reaching beyond Earth. But not so soon. Not when humanity had barely established footholds on Mars and Europa. "How long do we have?" she asked the nervous aide on the other end of the line. "They'll reach Earth orbit in approximately 72 hours, ma'am." Susan closed her eyes. 3 days to prepare for humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. The next morning, President Liam Foster addressed the nation. His face was grim as he confirmed what many already suspected. "My fellow Americans and citizens of the world, I stand before you today to share news of profound importance. We are not alone in the universe, and our visitors will arrive soon." Across the globe, reactions varied. Religious leaders called for prayer. Scientists demanded access to data. Military forces worldwide went on high alert. And ordinary people did what they always did in times of crisis. Some panicked and fled to the countryside, while others gathered in bars to watch the news and joke about Independence Day. In a small research facility outside Phoenix, Arizona, scientist Olivia Clark barely noticed the commotion. Her lab was partially underground and she often worked with headphones on. It wasn't until her colleague Dave knocked on her door that she learned about the aliens. "You're kidding," she said, pulling off her headphones. On her desk, crystal formations vibrated slightly as her sound equipment ran through test frequencies. "Nope, actual aliens. They'll be here in less than 3 days." Olivia frowned. "That's going to mess up my grant application." Dave laughed. "Yeah, I think the National Science Foundation might have other priorities now." At Space Command headquarters, Admiral Miller gathered Earth's top military leaders. The room was tense as they reviewed their limited options. "The UES Artemis is our best ship," General Frank Rivera said, pointing to the holographic display. "But it's still just one vessel. We have maybe 30 others that could put up any kind of fight." "Against how many of theirs?" Susan asked. "Current count is over 300 objects large enough to be warships," replied Air Force Colonel Judy Reeves. "And that's just what we can see." Susan looked around the room. "We need to prepare for all possibilities. If they're peaceful, great. If not..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. 72 tense hours passed. The alien fleet entered Earth orbit with precision that showed advanced navigation capabilities. They positioned themselves in a formation that military analysts noted would maximize weapons coverage of major cities. Admiral Miller stood in Space Command's control center, watching the largest screens as they showed the alien ships. They were unlike anything humans had designed. The vessels resembled elongated diamonds with segments that rotated independently, covered in what looked like scales made of some shimmering metal. "They're hailing us, ma'am," said the communications officer. "Standard radio frequencies, the message is being broadcast worldwide." "Put it through," Susan ordered, straightening her uniform. The screens flickered, and a face appeared that caused gasps throughout the control room. The alien was reptilian, with amber eyes with vertical pupils and scales in patterns of deep green and gold. When it spoke, its mouth revealed rows of sharp teeth. People of Earth, I am Supreme Warlord Skreeth of the Draconian Empire. Your planet has been chosen. You will surrender your resources and pledge loyalty to the Empire, or you will be eliminated. You have 24 hours to instruct your leaders to meet with us and arrange the terms of your surrender. The transmission ended abruptly. The control room erupted in voices until Admiral Miller slammed her hand on the table. Quiet. We knew this was a possibility. She turned to her communications team. Get me the President and the UN Secretary General, now. On the Artemis, docked at the orbital station above Earth, Captain Ryan Martinez watched the alien ships through the viewport of his ready room. As a third-generation Navy man and the first in his family to command a spacecraft, he had always dreamed of going down in history, but not like this. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Diane Foster, entered without knocking. Sir, we've received orders from Admiral Miller. All Space Force vessels are to prepare for possible combat operations. Ryan nodded slowly, still looking at the alien fleet. How many personnel do we have on board? Full complement, sir. We were preparing for the Jupiter mission next week, so everyone's here. Tell them to say goodbye to their families just in case, and then start running battle drills. As night fell across America, people looked up at the sky where new stars now hung. The lights of the Draconian warships visible even to the naked eye. In her lab, Olivia continued her work on crystal resonance, unaware that her research would soon become vital to humanity's survival. In Space Command, Admiral Miller prepared for a war against an enemy with vastly superior technology. And aboard the Artemis, Captain Martinez recorded what might be his final message home. Humanity had 24 hours to prepare for a war they couldn't possibly win, but humans had always been at their best when facing impossible odds. The 24-hour deadline passed. Earth's leaders had sent messages attempting to negotiate, but the Draconians responded with silence. Then, without warning, the attack began. The first strikes hit military bases around the world. Beams of intense blue light shot down from the Draconian ships, vaporizing buildings and melting runways. In orbit, smaller alien craft detached from the larger vessels and headed toward Earth's satellites, destroying them one by one. At Space Command, Admiral Susan Miller watched in horror as the screens went dark. We've lost contact with the Pacific Fleet, an officer reported. European Space Agency is gone too. Susan's jaw tightened. Launch everything we have, now. Around the world, humanity's defenses responded. Fighter jets scrambled only to be swatted from the sky. Ground-based missile systems fired, but their projectiles exploded harmlessly against the Draconians' energy shields. In Earth orbit, Captain Ryan Martinez and the UES Artemis led a small fleet of Earth's most advanced ships toward the alien armada. All vessels, maintain formation, Ryan ordered, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his stomach. Target the smaller ships first. Fire when ready. The battle in space was brief and brutal. Human railguns and laser systems struck the Draconian vessels, but their shields absorbed most of the damage. Only when multiple ships concentrated fire on a single target did they see results. We got one, Lieutenant Diane Foster shouted as a small Draconian craft exploded. Ryan allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before reality reasserted itself. One down, 300 to go, keep firing. The Artemis shook violently as it took a hit. Shields at 40%, Diane reported. Engine 2 is offline. Ryan knew they couldn't win this fight. Not today. All vessels begin strategic withdrawal. We've done what we can. As the human ships retreated, more Draconian vessels entered the atmosphere. They established 5 major landing zones in the Idoy, desert plains of North America, the steppes of Russia, the outback of Australia, the Sahara, and the Amazon basin. In Arizona, the research facility where Olivia Clark worked was 30 miles from one of these landing zones. The building shook as alien ships passed overhead. Alarms blared and emergency lights bathed the hallways in red. We need to evacuate, Dave shouted, grabbing equipment and shoving it into cases. Olivia shook her head. I'm not leaving my samples. She carefully packed crystalline formations into protective containers. These are 6 months of work. 6 months of work won't matter if we're dead. Before they could argue further, the facility director entered. The National Guard is evacuating everyone to Flagstaff. We have 30 minutes. Take only what's essential, as a bow. They prepared to leave. Olivia noticed something strange on her monitoring equipment. The crystals were vibrating in an unusual pattern. She glanced out the window at the distant Draconian ships and wondered if there was a connection. 100 miles away, National Guard Commander Grace Thompson directed evacuation efforts. At 39, Grace had served in multiple combat zones, but nothing had prepared her for this. Her troops helped civilians board buses and trucks, heading away from the alien landing zone. "Ma'am," called one of her sergeants, "we've got incoming." Grace looked up to see 3 Draconian fighters approaching. "Everyone under cover, now!" People screamed and ran for shelter. The alien ships fired, not at the humans, but at the road, ahead, cutting off their escape route. Then a larger vessel descended, its bottom opening to release dozens of Draconian soldiers. They were even more frightening up close. Standing 7 feet tall, the reptilian warriors wore armor that seemed to shift colors to match their surroundings. Their weapons fired bursts of energy that left smoking holes in whatever they hit. "Hold your fire," Grace ordered her troops. "We're outgunned." She watched as the aliens rounded up civilians, scanning them with handheld devices before separating them into groups. In orbit, the Artemis limped toward the safety of Earth's remaining orbital defenses. Ryan surveyed the damage to his ship. 1 engine destroyed, multiple hull breaches, and a dozen injured crew members. But they had managed something important. They had destroyed 2 Draconian vessels. "Captain," Diane called from her station, "we've analyzed the debris from the ships we destroyed. There's something odd about their technology." Ryan joined her at the science console. "What is it?" "Their systems use crystalline components, not silicon like our computers, but actual crystal structures that seem to channel energy in ways our science can't explain. Can we use that knowledge somehow?" "I don't know, but I've sent the data to Earth. Maybe someone smarter than us can figure it out." That someone turned out to be Olivia Clark. 3 weeks after the invasion began, she found herself working in an underground facility in the Rocky Mountains. The military had gathered scientists from various fields to study the Draconians and search for weaknesses. "Dr. Clark?" A man in an Air Force uniform approached her workstation. "I'm Dr. Kevin Johnson. I've been studying the Draconian biology samples we've recovered." Olivia looked up from her crystals. "Any luck?" Kevin shrugged. "Some. They're carbon-based like us, but with a completely different biochemistry. Their nervous system is fascinating. It uses crystalline nodes along their spine that seem to amplify neural signals." Olivia's eyes widened. "Crystalline nodes? Can I see your data?" They spent hours comparing notes. The crystals in Draconian technology and biology were similar to those Olivia had been studying, but far more advanced. "What were you researching before all this?" Kevin asked. "Sound wave effects on crystalline structures. Different frequencies cause different vibration patterns." She pulled up a video showing how crystals responded to specific sounds. Some frequencies can even crack them if they match the natural resonance. Kevin stared at the screen. "We need to test this on the Draconian samples." In a secure cell nearby, a wounded Draconian soldier was being held for study. The scientists set up speakers outside the cell and began playing various frequencies. At first, nothing happened. Then, as they reached 172.4 Hz, the alien suddenly convulsed, clutching the back of its neck where the neural nodes were located. "Turn it off," Kevin shouted, and Olivia stopped the sound. The Draconian slowly recovered, hissing threats in its own language. Olivia and Kevin exchanged looks. "We need to tell Admiral Miller," she said quietly. As the sound experiments continued, the war on Earth intensified. The Draconians established processing facilities at each landing zone, strip mining resources at an alarming rate. Millions of humans were captured, some used for labor, others taken to the alien ships for unknown purposes. But humanity was not defeated. Resistance groups formed around the world. Commander Grace Thompson led one such group in the American Midwest, coordinating with the remaining military forces to gather intelligence and rescue captives, and in orbit, Captain Ryan Martinez and the repaired UES Artemis prepared for their next mission. They didn't know it yet, but the discoveries being made by Olivia Clark and Kevin Johnson would soon give humanity its first real hope against the Draconian invaders. 3 months passed since the Draconians arrived. Nearly half of Earth was under their control. The invaders had built massive facilities that extracted minerals from the ground at incredible speeds. Their ships continued to patrol the skies, making travel dangerous for the remaining free humans. In her underground lab beneath the Rocky Mountains, Olivia Clark hadn't seen the sun in weeks. She worked day and night, refining her discovery about the sound frequencies that affected the Draconians. Kevin Johnson often worked beside her, his medical expertise helping them understand how the alien biology responded to the sounds. "Try this one," Olivia said, adjusting a dial on her equipment. A crystal sample taken from a damaged Draconian ship vibrated violently and then cracked. "That's the third successful test today." Kevin nodded, looking tired but pleased. "The range between 172.4 and 173.2 Hz seems most effective. The question is, how do we use this on a large scale?" A door opened, and Admiral Susan Miller entered the lab. Her uniform was wrinkled and dark circles shadowed her eyes. The war had aged her. "Dr. Clark, Dr. Johnson, I need an update." Olivia straightened. "We've confirmed that the frequency disrupts both their neural patterns and their technology. The effect is strongest when the sound comes from multiple directions simultaneously. Can we weaponize it?" Kevin spread his hands. "That's the challenge. We need to broadcast the frequency at high power, ideally from orbit to affect their ships. But our remaining satellites weren't designed for sound transmission through space." "What about the Artemis?" Susan asked. "Could it be modified to carry a broadcasting device?" Olivia thought for a moment. "Maybe, but it would need to get close to their command ship. Too dangerous." "I'll be the judge of that," Susan said sharply. "Prepare a detailed plan. If there's even a small chance this could work, we're taking it." Meanwhile, in the Midwest, Commander Grace Thompson led her resistance fighters through the ruins of what had once been Kansas City. They moved silently, avoiding the Draconian patrols that searched for human survivors. "Target ahead," whispered her scout, a young woman named Lily who had been a college student before the invasion. Grace used her binoculars to survey the building, once a hospital, now converted into what the resistance called a processing center. Intelligence suggested that captured humans were taken there before being transferred to the Draconian ships. "How many guards?" Grace asked. "4 outside, unknown number inside," Lily replied. Grace thought carefully. Her team numbered 15, armed with a mix of military weapons and improvised explosives. "We go in at dusk, standard rescue formation. Remember, we're here for survivors, not revenge." The rescue mission went smoothly until they reached the building's lower levels. There they found rows of humans in glass cells, many connected to strange machines. Some had surgical scars. Others seemed unconscious. "What are they doing to them?" Lily asked, horrified. Before Grace could answer, a male voice called weakly from a nearby cell. "They're studying us, looking for something in our biology." Grace approached the cell. Inside was a thin man with glasses, his left arm showing evidence of recent surgery. "Who are you?" "Paul Baker. I was a biochemist at the university." He pressed, his hand against the glass. "They took me 2 months ago. I've been watching, learning their language. They're desperate for something, a mineral, a compound, I'm not sure. Whatever it is, they think some humans might have it in their bodies." Grace signaled her team to break open the cell. "Can you walk? We're getting everyone out." They managed to free 32 captives before alarms sounded. Fighting their way out cost Grace 3 of her team, but they escaped with the rescued humans, including Paul. Back at their hidden base in an abandoned mining complex, Paul shared more information. "I worked on their ships for a while before they brought me to the processing center. Their technology is crystal-based, far more advanced than ours, but they're running out of something. some kind of energy source or material. That explains the mining operations, Grace said. But why experiment on humans? Paul shook his head. I don't know. But I overheard something about their homeworld being destroyed. I think Earth was their last hope. In orbit, Captain Ryan Martinez received new orders from Admiral Miller. The Artemis, recently retrofitted after its battle damage, would carry a special device designed by Olivia Clark and her team. Ryan studied the mission briefing with growing concern. This is essentially a suicide run, he told Lieutenant Diane. Foster, we need to get within half a mile of their command ship to broadcast this frequency. The crew should have a choice, Diane suggested. Ryan agreed. He called the entire crew to the main hangar bay and explained the mission. This could turn the tide of the war, he concluded. But I won't order anyone to come. This is volunteer only. He expected hesitation. Instead, every crew member stepped forward. My wife is in San Francisco, or what's left of it, said Engineer Sam West. My kids are hiding in the mountains. I'll do whatever it takes to give them a chance. Similar stories came from others. The Draconians had taken everything from them. The mission offered a small hope of striking back. At the mountain facility, Olivia supervised the final assembly of the broadcasting device. It was larger than she'd hoped, the size of a small car, but her tests confirmed it would generate the necessary power. The Artemis would launch in 3 days. You should get some sleep, Kevin told her, bringing her a cup of coffee. You've been working for 20 hours straight. Olivia shook her head. I'll sleep when the device is done. Every day we wait more, people die. Kevin sat beside her. Over the months of working together, they had developed a close bond forged by shared purpose and danger. Olivia, even if this works, it's just the beginning. The Draconian ground forces won't be affected if they're shielded from the broadcast. One problem at a time, she said. First we take out their fleet, then we deal with the ones on the ground. On the eve of the mission launch, Admiral Miller called a secure video conference with all key leaders of the resistance. Captain Martinez, from the Artemis, Commander Thompson from her Midwest base, and Doctors Clark and Johnson from the mountain facility. Operation Resonance begins at 0600 tomorrow, Susan announced. Commander Thompson, your forces will launch diversionary attacks on 3 Draconian strongholds to draw attention from the Artemis. Captain Martinez, once you're in position, Dr. Clark will activate the global satellite network to amplify the broadcast. She paused, looking at each of them. I don't need to tell you what's at stake. Humanity has been pushed to the edge of extinction. But tomorrow, we push back. As the meeting ended, Olivia felt a strange mix of hope and dread. The device worked in tests, but there were so many things that could go wrong. Kevin seemed to sense her worry and squeezed her hand. For what it's worth, he said quietly, if anyone can save the world with sound waves, it's you. Morning came too quickly. As the Artemis prepared for launch, humanity's last coordinated attack against the Draconian invaders was about to begin. The UES Artemis rose from its hidden bunker beneath what remained of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Dawn broke over the horizon as the ship climbed higher, its engines straining against Earth's gravity. Captain Ryan Martinez watched his crew work with quiet efficiency. No one spoke about the odds against them. Exiting atmosphere in 30 seconds, Lieutenant Diane Foster announced from her station. Ryan nodded. Activate stealth systems as soon as we clear the clouds. The Artemis wasn't truly invisible, but its hull had been coated with materials that absorbed radar and partially mimicked Draconian energy signatures. It was their best chance to get close to the enemy fleet without immediate detection. In her mobile command unit, Olivia Clark monitored the ship's progress. The broadcasting device she had designed was secured in the Artemis's cargo bay, ready to be deployed. Kevin Johnson sat beside her, watching a different screen that showed Commander Grace Thompson's forces moving into position. Ground teams are in place, Kevin reported. They'll begin their attacks in exactly 30 minutes. Admiral Susan Miller paced behind them. The timing has to be perfect. The Draconians can't suspect what we're really doing until it's too late. Around the world, resistance fighters prepared for simultaneous attacks on 3 Draconian strongholds. Their goal wasn't to win, That would be impossible with their limited weapons, but to create enough chaos to draw attention away from the Artemis. In the Midwest, Commander Grace Thompson led her team toward the processing facility they had raided before. This time they brought explosives. Remember, she told her fighters, we're the distraction. Make noise, cause damage, but don't take unnecessary risks. Retreat at the first signal. Paul Baker, the scientist they had rescued, insisted on joining them. I know their security systems, he had argued. I can get you deeper inside than you managed last time. Grace checked her watch. 10 minutes. Get ready. In orbit, the Artemis maneuvered carefully through the debris field that once held Earth's satellites. Ahead loomed the Draconian fleet, hundreds of ships arranged in a complex pattern around their massive command vessel. Distance to target, 8 miles, Diane reported. Still no sign they've detected us. Ryan took a deep breath. Begin approach vector. Keep our profile low and speed steady. The ship glided forward, a tiny shadow against Earth's blue backdrop. On the main screen, the Draconian command ship grew larger, a hulking structure of dark metal and glowing crystal formations. Sir, called the communications officer. Message from ground command. Diversion operations beginning now. On Earth, explosions rocked the Draconian strongholds. Grace's team struck the processing facility's power generators, while other resistance groups hit targets in Australia and Russia. Alien fighters scrambled from their bases, rushing to defend against the sudden attacks. In orbit, the distraction worked. Many Draconian vessels broke formation to respond to the ground assaults. The path to the command ship opened slightly. They're moving, Ryan said. Time to accelerate. Full thrust for 30 seconds, then cut to minimal power. The Artemis surged forward, covering half the remaining distance before slowing again. They were now close enough to make out individual features of the command ship: landing bays, weapon, ports, and massive crystal arrays that pulsed with energy. 3 miles to optimal broadcasting range, Diane said, but their luck had run out. Alarms blared across the bridge as sensors detected enemy ships turning toward them. We've been spotted, Ryan announced. All hands to battle stations. Weapons. Free. The Artemis fired first, its railgun striking a smaller Draconian vessel. The alien ship shuddered but returned fire immediately. Energy beams lashed out, striking the Artemis's shields. Shields at 80%, Diane reported. 4 enemy ships approaching. Ryan gripped his chair. Evasive maneuvers. Keep us moving. Toward the target. More Draconian ships noticed the battle and turned to join. The Artemis twisted and rolled, its weapons firing continuously. They scored several hits, but for each damaged alien ship, 2 more appeared. We're not going to make it, Diane said, her voice tight. Too many of them. Ryan studied the tactical display. Yes, we will. He opened a channel to engineering. Sam, I need maximum power to the main engines. We're going to ram our way through. Engineer. Sam West's voice crackled over the speakers. That'll leave the shields weak, Captain. We don't have a choice, do it. The Artemis shot forward, its engines glowing white-hot. It smashed between 2 Draconian vessels, shields sparking as they scraped against alien hulls. Weapons fire followed them, scoring hits against their weakened defenses. Shields failing, Diane called out. Hull breach on deck 3. Ryan ignored the damage reports. Distance to target? 1 mile, Diane answered. We're almost in range. In her command unit, Olivia watched the battle unfold with rising dread. They're taking too much damage, they won't survive this. Admiral Miller leaned over the communications officer. Captain Martinez, deploy the device now. We'll activate it remotely. Ryan's voice came through, partially obscured by static. Negative. Signal could be blocked at this distance, we need to get closer. The Artemis took another hit, more serious this time. The bridge shook violently, and several consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Ryan was thrown from his chair but climbed back up, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. Status report. Diane checked her damaged console. Engines at 40%. Weapons offline. Life support failing on lower decks. She looked up at him. But we're in position, sir. Half a mile from target. Ryan nodded grimly. Deploy the device now. The bottom of the Artemis opened, and the broadcasting unit dropped into space. It unfolded like a flower, extending antenna arrays in all directions. Device deployed, Ryan reported to ground command. Ready for activation. In her command unit, Olivia's fingers flew over her keyboard, sending activation codes connecting to remaining Earth satellites. Around the world, 37 satellites that had survived the initial Draconian attacks received her signal. They adjusted their positions slightly, preparing to amplify the frequency broadcast. Global network ready, Kevin confirmed. Frequency set to 172.8 Hz. Olivia looked at Admiral Miller, who gave a short nod. Do it. Olivia pressed the final key. Broadcasting now. There was a moment of stillness, as if the universe held its breath. Then, from the device floating near the Artemis, waves of invisible energy pulsed outward. The satellites caught the signal and reflected it, creating a web of resonant frequency that enveloped Earth's orbit. On the Draconian ships, chaos erupted. The crystalline components in their technology vibrated, then cracked. Energy systems failed. Weapons went dark. And the Draconian soldiers themselves collapsed in agony as the neural nodes along their spines overloaded. From the damaged bridge of the Artemis, Ryan and his crew watched in amazement as light after light winked out. Across the alien fleet, the massive command ship drifted sideways, its engines dead. It's working, Diane whispered. Ryan allowed himself a small smile. Send word to Earth. Tell them Operation Resonance was a success. The battle was over almost as quickly as it had begun. Across Earth, Draconian ground forces lost contact with their fleet. Their weapons, linked to the same crystal technology, failed in their hands. In her command center, Admiral Miller received the news with stunned silence. Then she turned to Olivia and Kevin. You did it. You actually did it. Olivia shook her head, thinking of the Artemis and its crew. We all did it. Together. As night fell across Earth, humans everywhere looked up to see something unprecedented. The Draconian fleet, once so menacing, now dark and silent against the stars. 1 week after Operation Resonance, humanity began to take stock of its victory. The Draconian fleet hung silent in orbit, the massive ships now dark and powerless. On Earth, the alien ground forces had scattered without support from their fleet. Some fought to the death while others simply disappeared into the wilderness. The UES Artemis had returned to Earth, badly damaged but still intact. Captain Ryan Martinez and most of his crew survived, though they now worked around the clock, helping to coordinate the next phase of operations. The boarding teams are ready, Ryan told Admiral Susan Miller as they stood in the command center. We have 20 ships prepared to dock with the Draconian vessels. Susan studied the map showing the positions of the alien ships. Start with the smaller craft. We need to understand their technology before attempting to board the command ship. Ryan nodded. The first teams launch in 2 hours. Across the room, Olivia Clark and Kevin Johnson examined new data from their frequency broadcast. The effect had been even more powerful than they had predicted. The crystal structures didn't just fail, Olivia explained, pointing to microscope images. They've completely changed at the molecular level. They won't work again, even if the Draconians try to restart them. Kevin looked up from his notes. What about the Draconians themselves? Any word from the first contact teams? Strange reports, Susan said, joining their conversation. Many of the ships appear to be empty, or nearly empty. Far fewer aliens than we expected. This mystery deepened as the human boarding parties explored more of the alien fleet. Ship after ship contained sophisticated technology, but only minimal crew. Some vessels had no living Draconians at all, just automated systems. Commander Grace Thompson led one of these boarding teams. After securing the ground facilities, she had volunteered to join the space operations. Now she floated through the corridors of a Draconian cruiser, her team moving carefully in zero gravity. Central Command, this is Thompson, she reported through her radio. We've secured the engine room and bridge. Total count is 3 Draconian bodies, all deceased. No survivors on this vessel. Copy that, Commander. came the reply. Collect any data storage devices and prepare for extraction. Grace signaled to her team to continue searching. Something doesn't add up, she told Paul Baker, who had insisted on joining this mission as well. Where is everyone? A ship this size should have dozens of crew members. Paul examined a control panel. Maybe they were never here. Look at these systems, highly automated. They could run with minimal oversight. As more ships were explored, a pattern emerged. The entire Draconian fleet seemed designed to operate with just a fraction of the crew that a human fleet would require. But why? The answer would come from the command ship. 3 days later, a special team including Captain Martinez, Commander Thompson, and Admiral Miller prepared to board the massive Draconian flagship. Olivia and Kevin joined them, bringing equipment to study the alien technology. The boarding went smoothly, too smoothly. They encountered no resistance as they made their way to the central chamber of the ship. They're all dead, Ryan said quietly, as they entered the bridge. At least 20 Draconian bodies lay where they had fallen when the frequency hit, but one corner of the room showed signs of life support equipment. A single Draconian was connected to various tubes and monitors. Unlike the others, this one wore no armor, instead dressed in what appeared to be civilian clothing adorned with unfamiliar symbols. As the humans approached, the alien's eyes opened. It regarded them without apparent fear. "You found our weakness," it said in halting English. "Impressive." Susan stepped forward. "You speak our language. I am Krath, lead scientist. I studied you before the invasion." The Draconian's voice was raspy but clear. "Our supreme warlord is dead. I speak for what remains of my people." "Why did you attack us?" Ryan demanded. Krath's reptilian features showed what might have been sadness. "We had no choice. Our homeworld was destroyed. 17 of our colony worlds as well." "By whom?" Susan asked. "Not whom. What?" Krath gestured weakly to a control panel. "Activate this. See for yourself." Kevin carefully pressed the indicated controls. A holographic display filled the center of the room, showing a star system none of them recognized. As they watched, a dark mass appeared at the edge of the system. It moved inward, engulfing planets as it went. Where it passed, nothing remained. "We call it the Void," Krath explained. "It consumes everything, matter, energy, even light. We fled before it for generations. Your Earth was to be our final refuge." Grace stepped closer to the display. "So you decided to conquer us rather than ask for help?" "Our military leaders decided," Krath corrected. "They believed sharing a world would make us vulnerable. Better to rule than to beg." The alien's breathing grew labored. "A mistake. We underestimated your resourcefulness." "How many of your people are left?" Olivia asked. "Perhaps 10,000, mostly scientists and civilians. Our warriors fought to the end, as is their way." Krath touched a different control, showing the locations of Draconian survivors in hidden bases around Earth. "We surrender to your terms." Overso. The next months, humanity faced the challenge of dealing with their former enemies. Some wanted revenge for the invasion, but cooler heads prevailed. The Draconians possessed knowledge that could advance human technology by centuries, and they brought a warning about a threat that might eventually reach Earth. 5 years after the invasion, the situation had transformed completely. The Human Draconian Science Coalition worked to understand and track the Void phenomenon. Their combined technology allowed them to predict its movement through space, a pattern that would bring it to Earth's solar system within 50 years. On a clear morning, Olivia Clark stood on the observation deck of the new International Space Center, watching the launch of humanity's newest vessel. The UES Artemis II dwarfed its predecessor, built with a combination of human ingenuity and Draconian knowledge. Kevin Johnson joined her, now her husband as well as research partner. "It's beautiful," he said, slipping his arm around her waist, and necessary, she replied. "The monitoring stations need to be in place before the year's end." They watched as the ship cleared Earth's atmosphere, its engines glowing with an energy that neither human nor Draconian science could have created alone. In the command chair of the Artemis II sat Admiral Ryan Martinez, promoted after the war. Beside him, his first officer, a young Draconian named Krath's heir, adopted by the aging scientist who had chosen cooperation over conflict. Course set for the Outer System Admiral, reported Lieutenant Commander Lily Thompson, once a Resistance fighter, now a senior officer. Ryan nodded, looking at the crew, human and Draconian working side by side. Commence Operation Sentinel. Let's make sure both our peoples have a future. As the ship accelerated toward the stars, he reflected on the irony of it all. The Draconian invasion, despite its horror and destruction, had forced humanity to advance, centuries within just a few years. Perhaps this acceleration was exactly what Earth needed to face the greater threat that loomed in the dark between the stars. The void was coming, but this time, two species would stand against it together.